All right, everyone, what is going on? Needs More Drums here, back in Accelerando, which is our 12-hour city for episode 3 of the series. This is the third hour of the build, and the name of the game today is basically just expansion. We're going to be doing some zoning, finally getting some people moved in, and the end goal for this episode was really just to make some money. We've been spending a lot, laying out these roads, putting down some pretty big infrastructure projects, and it's time to turn that around and get a little bit of an income. So to my surprise, actually, I was able to get somewhat of a profit by the end of this episode. So stay tuned and see how we managed to do that. I was pretty surprised given the rate that people were moving in. But before we put down any zones, it was important to go back and kind of rethink some of the roadways here. I figured that I didn't really want this giant elevated highway going straight through the center of the downtown. So I opted to make it just like a big main avenue. And so we put a 6-lane road straight through there, more of a arterial road. So we're limiting the amount of connections. We only have a couple of big roundabouts. I know this is not something that I'm used to seeing in the States, but in terms of getting the traffic to function really well and flow really well, I think that this isn't the worst layout. So definitely looks a lot better in my opinion. I kind of like not having the big elevated highway going through the center, and just like with the size of the city, I just didn't really think we needed it. Plus, we could put this cool bridge right here. I wanted to do something a little bit more attractive in terms of a bridge, so I think this fits really well. But yeah, before we continue, I just want to say thank you so much for the support in the beginning of this series. I mean, the first video was just awesome for the channel. I got a ton of new subscribers, a ton of views, and all of the comments were just really, really positive and really encouraging. So I really always appreciate the comments that you all leave on the videos. I read every single one of them, and whether it's something constructive or whether it's just that you enjoyed the episode, it really means a lot. And so thank you for checking out the channel, checking out the series, and please feel free to leave any comment in the comment section below. So anyway, back to the program here. Yeah, so we're just redoing this highway connection, and this time we actually take the liberty of building this highway connection that we didn't get to in the past couple episodes. And this one, I tried to make this a little bit, I'm thinking about a little bit bigger of an interchange here, something that could handle a pretty high traffic volume. And I want to keep people moving, since that's going to be really bringing people in and out of the city. And here I decided to switch, or to kind of merge the main avenue with the highway, and so it kind of, you can see we split off here into a divided highway. And just trying to get the transition smooth, trying to make the connection look clean. And I always like to try to avoid any super sharp turns, so people aren't like having to so the shallower the turn and the smoother the turn, the faster the cars can go. And plus it just looks, a lot better too. So I actually decided to make a connection here to this avenue, just as like a kind of it started as just a one-sided connection where, you can get on the highway going into the city or get off the highway coming out of the city to this main road. But then later on, once we build the interchange, you'll see that I actually add to this a little bit. And so this gets to be kind of a busy interchange. And I'm really curious as to how this will actually end up functioning, once we start seeing some traffic flow through it and everything like that. I typically I try to, keep things relatively realistic in terms of the connections of the interchanges and kind of how they look and function. But this one, I took a couple of liberties, in terms of like just functionality and making it a little bit more efficient to connect to all the places that it needs to. But yeah, so there's our first connection there, just the flyover overpass. And then I realized that I had to get rid of these power lines for the time being because they were too low. I couldn't get the connection the height that I needed to go under these. I need to get one level higher so that we can do the flyover of the part of the T interchange here. So you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute, but removing those power lines was a necessity to make this work. And I don't always like how the merge lane looks. You know, you can see it's missing that shoulder line there, and that's okay for now. I think, you know, I can mess with that a little bit later. This is one of those times where, again, in this series, I just have to say, you know what, that's good enough. I'm not going to sit there and mess with the road too much and keep rebuilding it to try to make it look, you know, perfect. It's good enough. It functions. It's fine. I'll probably, you know, never really look at that again. So it could be worse, right? But yeah, so this one here is what I was talking about with the flyover. I needed that extra bit of height. And here we're going to use the complex curve tool. And this is, again, a very nifty tool. You click into the center where you want your bend to be, and then it just creates a perfect bend like that, and creates a really, really nice connection. So I like that tool. I'm starting to be a little bit more comfortable with it. It's a little weird to use at first, I gotta admit, and it's something that, you know, it has very specific use cases, but once you figure out what those use cases are, it's a very powerful tool and can, you know, lead to some really, really nice looking curves and everything, you know, with your highway interchanges and such. So there's a, you know, our last connection there for this type of T interchange, and you'll see, I think it's a little bit late. Maybe it is now I do it. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, right here. So we're going to actually branch this off and make a connection to that avenue that we started with here. You'll see I'll add an extra lane here, and then for the sake of completion, added another off ramp, or like another exit lane there. But yep, here you go. We can see we're making this connection now. And the reason that I did this is because, you know, I just wanted to give people one more way to enter and exit the highway and get around the city. I think that the more connections that we have, you know, the better. Within reason, of course, and we don't need to connect every single road, but with this being kind of a high volume interchange, we're going to see a lot of traffic here. I want to make sure that people can get, you know, to and from even this, what may be considered kind of the outskirts of the city. You know, I want to make sure that people can get where they need to go, and it makes for a very, you know, functional traffic flow. So here we'll just add one more lane, and then of course, you know, we'll add a second merge lane, and there we go. We'll add another lane there as well, so that traffic can slowly start to kind of get condensed back into the 2-lane road. And I actually felt that it wasn't necessary to have that 2-lane on ramp either there. But anyway, now we'll go ahead and jump back over here and make the highway connection here. And I think this is why I chose to have a roundabout here. It just looks really good, and it provides a really easy access point for this highway there. But that was it in terms of fixing some old, you know, road layout things. And now we're actually starting to lay down some zones. So I wanted to go for a bit of variety here. This being the downtown, I wanted this part here is going to be mainly residential. We'll mix in probably some commercial, and you'll see in a little bit we'll put down some office zones as well, but those are going to be closer to the kind of to the train station. We'll keep the office in kind of one corner, and then people, you know, can live in this part of the downtown. So we'll have a nice mix of, I actually don't even think we put down any high density commercial, if I'm being honest, in this area. So I think we're going to keep it pretty residential for now, and then I'm sort of leaving space for future zones. So you'll see once we start zoning, I end up kind of bouncing around a lot just because of the way that the game is. You kind of have to, you know, the demand really fluctuates, and so I'm kind of just chipping away at, you know, different types of demand as it pops up. So, you know, you'll see a lot of going back and forth between industry, and then we'll pop back and kind of zone, you know, like another neighborhood, then we'll zone some commercial, and then, you know, go back to the industry, and, you know, vice and all that, you know, going all around the city, so et cetera, right? So that's just, you know, something interesting with this game. It doesn't really make, I could like zone out everything at once, but I don't know, I kind of like to see, you know, I like to think about the zones that I'm putting down and kind of where I want certain densities and things. And, you know, I'm thinking about like destinations, like right here, right? This is kind of there's a main road here. We still have a relatively rigid grid layout. This is going to serve as like a little sort of a mini downtown for this little neighborhood here. You know, we'll have some stores. You saw I just put down some mixed use, sort of like a little town square, so to speak. And then over here, this is kind of going to be more of a suburb, but again, you'll see that we'll put down a little sort of town square type area here. And this section actually ends up becoming, I think, the most complete, you know, the most complete kind of little area that we zoned today. Just for whatever reason, you know, we have a nice mix of low and medium density, and I think that a lot of the zoning demand today was in regard to low and medium density. And I will say, you'll see that I don't do a lot in this episode related to city services. And the reason for that is I just wanted to see if I can make some money. And speaking of money, look at that expense bar, just huge, you know, skyscraper sized red bar there, no green to be found anywhere. And so we kind of balanced the budget a little bit, you know, dropped some of the budget for power, for water, since we don't really need, you know, I mean, that power plant, for example, is putting out like 200 plus megawatts, and we just don't need that right now, right? We have a population of less than 100 at the moment, so there's no reason to have a full budget allocated to the electricity. But you know, we'll keep an eye on that and just kind of keep raising that up as we need to. But I think it should be good for quite a while as is. Yeah, you can see some of the zones starting to pop up here. I've been going for usually I'm going for a nice mix of the for the residential, like the row houses. I love the northeast row houses, and yeah, you can see here we're kind of messing with the budget a little bit more, which is good. You know, I think it's good to do this early on in the game when we don't when we really need to be conscious about our money. And I know we have a lot in the bank, but I'm trying to save that up because I know that in the next episode we're probably going to have to really invest in some city services like police and fire, and education too. Education's a big one. But anyway, like I was saying, I really like the northeastern row houses in this game. I think they look fantastic and they have a nice variety. In terms of low density residential, you'll see that in this area I'm using the waterfront, the North American waterfront housing. I think those have a lot of nice looking homes that kind of reflect, you know, North American or like US suburbia. The Southwest low density is good too, but they also have those ones that are like kind of a sort of like very modernist looking, like three flats in a way. They're like those very like square buildings with multiple levels. I didn't really want any of those, so I opted for the just for the waterfront, just to kind of know what those look like. But we actually end up making a little later on in the episode, we actually switched to some UK low density buildings, some UK houses, and I like those too. I think they look really good, and it'll be nice to have a little bit of variety in the different towns that we create. I like to create kind of different and distinct little neighborhoods, you know, throughout the city, so it doesn't feel like everything's just the same. You know, I like to have a little bit of variety and stuff. So same thing can be said. We actually use some of the Southwest buildings as well. I love the Southwest mixed use. I love the medium density ones are pretty nice as well. And actually the high density Southwest buildings I really like. They're sort of these smaller, I can't even call them skyscrapers. They're really quite a bit smaller than that. But you know, they're a really nice bridge between the medium density apartments and the high density like vanilla apartments. So putting some of those Southwest high density buildings in that downtown residential area as we try to transition out of that into, you know, lower density zoning, it's really going to look good. And I'm very excited to put some of those down and kind of see how it grows. But yeah, so you'll see that I upgraded this road here to a main road, and I realized that I zoned low density along it at first, but that's definitely going to change. I don't want to keep, you know, those houses along this main road. It just made sense because that road was sort of a through street all the way from the highway to kind of into the downtown, and it wouldn't make sense that it would not be a main road. And we'll add another highway connection there eventually as well. But now coming over to this side of the city, we're working, you can see there, we just had some industry, some offices. Here we're putting down some more offices in the downtown. This is where I want them to sit. Just along this main road here, you figure a lot of people are going to work here, so it's close to the train station. People can have a nice, easy commute into like the business district, you know. And I'm leaving some space between these buildings for some parks. I like to leave a little bit of green space or some open space in the downtown. And I think that when you really look at bigger cities, maybe not so much like New York, but I think a lot of like Chicago, where there's, you know, a good amount of space in between the buildings for you to kind of like walk through. There's a lot of pedestrian access. There's some you know, smaller parks that just take up, you know, part of the lot, so it doesn't feel you know, like every single building is sitting right on top of each other. So we're going to try to do that in the downtown and make it just look really nice and feel really, really, you know, dense but open, right? Busy but like still kind of attractive and all that. So see how it looks, but see what we can do with the time crunch that we're on. But yeah, you can see here again, just filling out some of these empty zones in this part of the town over here. Haven't decided anything, you know, in terms of like district names or anything like that. So if you have a suggestion, go ahead and feel free to leave it in the comments. If you have any good names for districts, I always love kind of like, you know, plays off of musical words or something like that, music terms, musicians. I always tend to go that route. But yeah, if you got no matter what, anything that fits kind of the theme of the city, feel free to give me a suggestion. But yeah, you'll see here, I tried to build like a little industrial area that it just didn't feel so like packed. I wanted to leave a little bit of green space, you know, add a parking lot, kind of make it a little bit more of like a less dense industrial area. And I think having those areas around, you know, in like a majorly industrial part of the city, it's kind of nice. You know, you still want to have some green space. You can put some commercial zones around there. You figure that the workers will have to go grab, you know, lunch or dinner or something like that. So, you know, having a little bit of commercial even by your industrial is not always a bad thing. But yeah, I envision that this is going to turn into like a nice little riverside town. We'll probably put like a nice little waterfront access point here, and, you know, maybe like some trails, a nice little park, you know, kind of right along the riverbank there. So we'll, you know, that's going to be a whole thing in and of itself. We'll probably take a whole episode dedicated to parks and just general city beautification, but that is not today. As you can see, you know, the goal again is just to make some money. And here again, we're converting another road to a main road. I think that we just having that highway connection there and the way that, you know, it kind of brought traffic around this industrial park here, it just made sense to upgrade that. And I feel like it's going to have a lot of truck traffic. It's going to connect, you know, sort of the train station area over there to well, what we just built, you know, closer to that rail yard. But yeah, you can see here, just filling in some of this open space, trying to work around the existing road and rail network, you know, making some little pockets of industry here. The industrial demand just never seems to stop. I mean, people always need jobs, and it's important to kind of stay on top of that. You know, we don't want a high unemployment rate. If we don't zone enough workplaces, people won't be able to get jobs and the city will make no money. So, you know, they're just going to be, those people that are unemployed are just going to be, you know, relying on us for benefits and resources, and rather than actually, you know, contributing to the city's economy. So we got to make that happen. We got to make sure that we have enough jobs. And that also means, you know, we got to make sure that we have enough people to justify having more jobs. So again, expansion. Here's some more zones. I realized that I messed up and accidentally didn't do the waterfront there, so I got to go back and redo those. You can see I said, what's going on there? Oh, this isn't the right zone. Dezone it, rezone it. We'll make sure that this is all these buildings kind of match. You know, I like when my neighborhoods are consistent. And oh, I forgot to even talk about what I'm doing here with like the lot sizes. This is a nice little trick I like to do within the vanilla game to make sure that your lot sizes are all the same and your cities look a little bit more planned out. It's not perfect. You can see that some of these are getting like 2x2 plots instead of the 4x2. But you know what? Overall though, it looks a lot better than having like all of these mismatched lot sizes. You know, if you want an area like this that's a little bit more uniform, this is a great way to do that. Just zoning out each lot individually, and then you just kind of fill in the gaps. It takes little to no extra time, and it just looks so much better. I did a video about, you know, some of my tips for zoning, and that was one of them. So if you want to check that out, go ahead. If you're unfamiliar with some of the ways to zone better in vanilla, because it could be a little bit frustrating sometimes. And don't get me wrong, not everything in this game is perfect when it comes to zoning. Even if you have a couple of tips and tricks, sometimes the zone will like not align with the road the way you thought it does, and buildings won't zone in the way that you want them to, and it just gets really frustrating. But theme of this series, again, just got to be okay with it sometimes. You know, got to know when to walk away and move on to another part of the city. But you can see here, like I said, this part of the of the city is looking, you know, a little bit more complete than some of the other areas. I'm not quite sure why. I just feel like I just kept filling in zones here, and you can see there we upgraded those houses to some medium density, being along the main road. It just made sense. So can't complain about that. But yeah, there's still a lot of room to zone out some industry over here. I feel like I'm gonna have to still think about another area to have as an industrial park, because man, this is just getting filled up really quickly. Industrial buildings take up a big footprint, and you know, you always just need a lot of them. And I'm still gonna add some specialized industry into this map as well. So I gotta think about that. I'll have probably another one of the episodes. You know, we'll do like public transit, we'll do parks, and we'll also do like specialized industry, at least in terms of like farms and things. I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of really, once we get done zoning some of the, like the downtown and kind of the surrounding suburbs, we'll want like an episode to sort of work on the outskirts and create some more smaller suburbs, some, you know, really spread out like areas, and that includes some farmland as well. So once we do that, it's just going to make the map, or like not the map, but like the whole area that we've built is going to make it feel really cohesive and complete, and like it didn't just stop. So I want to make sure that we do that before the end of the series, because I think that really is what makes like a city look complete, is when you kind of know where to stop the build. Your city has very clear boundaries. You know, you have your downtown, you have your suburbs, and then it converts to be a little bit more rural, and then it's like just nature, right? So having those different sections just really makes the whole kind of region and city just feel very complete. But yeah, here's where I started putting down some of those UK buildings, adding in some cul-de-sacs, kind of expanding out this road network. This is like a smaller little suburban town. And yeah, I'm excited to build this one as well. We'll have it sit by the river, add some nice, you know, trails and things there too. But yeah, I think it's almost time to call it an episode. We're just going to place down a crematorium because we started getting some death care notices. But other than that, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Have a great week, and peace out.